Welcome to this week's episode of the Aiming Five Hole Podcast. I'm Phil with my buddy Ryan. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Doing well. How you doing? What are you talking about this week?
Well, we've hit the quarter mark of the season.
Uh,
One quarter of the season done with at Thanksgiving, and you know what
we
that
get to
means?
we get to revisit the Thanksgiving rule.
The Thanksgiving
With
rule.
Gotta loosen my belt after this weekend's worth of eating, and then talk about the Thanksgiving rule.
Yeah. So we
Yeah,
want to
we
we
will.
want to remind people what that means.
Well, why don't we come back to it? Let's start with our little Habs and Leafs
There we
recaps
go.
from the
Okay.
week.
They both
We
had
can definitely spend a little
light
bit more time
schedule.
on the Leafs because Habs are not my favorite topic right
Well, we can start with the Leafs. Hey, Leafs they both teams had a soft week in terms of number of games. We had a bit of a break. We had a couple games last week, and hey, we didn't play well in Florida, and then played well on the weekend in Tampa Bay. I went to that game, took my daughter to the game, and saw a nice win. Although they played two really good periods, and then a stinker in the third, a game that shouldn't have even close. It came down to the last couple of minutes. So, but hey, Matthews back. Gonna take him a few games to get the rust off. Of course, we get Matthews back, we lose McCann, and then on Saturday we lose McCabe. So, injury bug has hit the Leafs. Obviously, we got a lot of guys out of the lineup. But I'm enjoying watching Mitten scored tonight. We're not going to include tonight in our discussion of the theory, but Leafs win tonight. Um, over Chicago, Mitten gets his second goal. You know what that means? He's same amount of goals as Robertson.
Yep, I knew that was coming.
Robertson's played over 20 and Mitten's played 4.
I'm looking forward to Nick Robertson getting released and getting picked up on waivers by somebody, and you are going to have the celebration of all celebrations on this show.
I don't
and then
drink
he's
champagne.
gonna
I'm gonna pop champagne on this podcast.
and then he's gonna score 67 goals next year, and
If
you are
that
going to
happens,
be.
I'm fine with it. I'm just sick of watching that guy skate around like he's got no clue. So, but hey, we got a busy week this week. The Leafs got a busy
Yeah.
week. We'll hopefully get some guys back from the infirmary. But hey, the Leafs have, again, as I said, every podcast we talk about this, the Leafs have shown times where they're playing the new style Berube hockey, and then they get big leads and they sit back and play the old style and below them almost. So Berube, I got to believe I am in belief that he will knock them out of this habit before they get to the playoffs, and hopefully they can play the styles going back. And you got to hand it to Marner and Nylander. They both stepped up during these injuries and have played great hockey. Although the only other thing we can talk about the Leafs, yeah, especially Nylander, and both of them have played well. The only thing we got to talk about is the rumors going around about what they're obviously trying to re-sign Marner. I still got my for sale sign on my yard, but the recent rumors are suggesting, if you believe the pundits that are talking about this and saying it, are that his asking price is to be paid more than Matthews on an average AAV, which average annual salary, which to me is just crazy. I don't think the
That
Leafs,
makes no sense.
and if he sticks to this, no matter where they are in the standings come the trade deadline, they're going to have to trade him because they can't let him get away to leave in the offseason for nothing.
Oh, for sure.
So they have to trade him before the deadline if he sticks to that. But I got to believe and hope that they can work it out. If not, I think he'll be gone by the trade deadline, no matter where they're in place. I know that sounds crazy to talk about, but you can't pay him more than Matthews. And again, he's had great regular seasons and he has been in the playoffs. So
I wonder if he wants to be traded then. I mean, you wouldn't say something like that and put it that way and let it leak unless you were trying to get traded.
yeah,
Or
they're putting pressure on him.
Leafs leaked it to put pressure on him. But that's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to pay him that kind of scratch and keep everybody on the lineup because you're just going to end up in the same place you are today. And by the way, at some point in the next year or two, you're going to have to pay Wool and Stillhartz because they're standing on their head. They're both playing great, and you're going to have to pay these guys. So,
well, you pay one of them, right? You're not
right.
The days of having two $5 million or $6 million goalies are
you
you can't really do that anymore.
No.
But That's really fascinating that Marner would take that direct an approach to it, because
Yeah,
like he's not a put a team on his back kind of guy through the playoffs. He's,
no.
I can understand if somebody like, and I hate saying this, like a Matthew Tkachuk said, I want to be one of the highest paid guys in the league because I practically put a team on my back through the first couple rounds of the playoffs to
Yeah, but even in that
get
team, you're
us where
not
we
paying
were.
him more than Barkov.
I I could see an argument for it.
Really? I'm not
I
sure.
could see an
Yeah,
argument for it.
I'm not sure in that
Barkov
case.
is Barkov's their shutdown guy, but like the Kachuk's leadership and his timely scoring in the playoffs and his
Yeah, but you talk to you hear all the chatter about Barkov. Same thing. Playoffs. He's a leader. He plays both ends of the ice.
yeah,
He's the setup man. Without as great as, and I hate to admit it, as good as Kachuk is, I don't think they win without Barkov last year in the playoffs.
true, true. But Barkov missed a large part of the season,
Yeah, well,
and
probably kept him
and
healthy
Kachuk
for the
carried them.
playoffs. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
how often are we
But we've
seeing
also
that
talked
these
about
days?
that team as just a good four-line
Yeah, they're just a
team. They're
top to
just
bottom,
top to
very solid
bottom.
team.
But anyways,
Yeah.
I think the Leafs are on the right track for the most part. Again, we got Berube's got to continue to beat the old Leafs out of them, and hopefully by the playoffs they'll do that, and we'll see what happens with the Marner talk. So let's
Yeah.
move on because we want to get to the big meat of this thing.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So
how are you
very
feeling about
quickly
your
with the
Habs?
Canadians,
The couch is open. The couch is
they had two back to backs this week and lost three out of the four of them. Uh, the one game they won against Columbus was after my most hated thing in hockey, which I've talked about before, which is the back to back with travel.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Um, and they managed to win that game. They looked pretty good doing it. I was real happy about that. But this weekend, I mean, there's two disasters of the game against New York was a disaster because the refereeing was about as bad as it possibly could have been, and I think they kind of got hosed. On and then on Sunday against Boston, which really pisses me off because I wanted them to spoil the centennial celebration from the Bruins, and they couldn't even pull that off. But again, they gave up like 3 goals in a minute 10 seconds. It's like how many times have they done this year where they just completely lost the thread
Right.
for a short period of time and then it just ends the game for all intent, and they fight their way back in because teams take their foot off the pedal when they go up 4-0. But it's super super frustrating. On the plus side, Caulfield's starting to put the puck in the net again. Patrick Laine's probably coming back this week. Who knows how long it'll take him to get
He's
his.
skating, which is great. And
Yeah,
that's, as we've talked about, it's going to just add a little bit of firepower.
yeah, for sure. It was a bit disappointing to see the Joshua Roy audition go poorly in the 4 games that he played. He didn't score any points. He didn't look particularly physical. He didn't he wasn't tough along the boards. He wasn't complimenting the players around him. I think one of the things that everybody loved about him in the juniors and why Connor Bedard loved playing with him was he's one of those players like a Brian Rust who just elevates his games, knows how to complement the superstar players that are possession driving players and get to the right place and support the play the way they need to, and they get their points as a result. Now, Rod did not exactly get put on a line to really shine in that role, but it was just super frustrating to see. He got sent down after training camp because he just wasn't engaged enough to make the team, and there wasn't that much of an improvement. So he'll go back to Laval and torch the AHL for a while longer. But it was very frustrating to see just that there wasn't the fire there that I was hoping that I thought he'd just be throwing himself around like
Yeah.
Gallagher for the entire time. But a frustrating week. The loss against Boston just had me seething. It's just like the loss against Vegas.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the Rangers game for the first couple periods, and I was again they can be a fun team to watch when the young kids are going, and they were holding tight
Yeah,
with them for the first couple of periods. I fell apart a bit in the third period, but again, it's just a young team, and I know it's got to be frustrating as a fan to see that they keep being a young team, but when are they going to start showing progress, right?
Well, yeah.
That's the
Honestly,
problem.
it's if it may not be as traumatic for me if I didn't have Ottawa just a few miles down the road, showing what happens when a very talented young core doesn't take the next step forward
Yes.
and keeps blowing it and not learning how to win. So
Yes.
I'm more than a little bit nervous at this
Yes.
point. I'm not a skies falling guy, but I'm more than a little bit
Yeah.
nervous.
But
So
you're
that's the
still
Habs
on
and
the
Leafs
couch.
week.
You're still on the doctor's couch, which
Still on the doctor's couch, working through processing. I'm
there you
processing.
go. You're doing a good job, but you're
Thank
looking
you.
good. You're not as red faced as you were a couple weeks
No,
ago, so it's good.
no.
It's good. Well, let's move on to something more fun. As we
Yes, yes,
mentioned
yes,
off the
yes.
top, we've hit the end of the first quarter. The first quarter of the season is over. And with it, for those of you who are listening, means we hit the U.S. Thanksgiving break. And there is a theory, and that just to remind people what that theory is, since 2005, 2006, which is 14 seasons, and you're probably saying, well, that's not 14 seasons, but we were discounting the two COVID seasons. So in the last 14 seasons, since 2005, 2006, 76% of the teams that are in a playoff position as of the Thanksgiving weekend make the playoffs, which means between now and the end of the season, if the theory holds, only four teams that are in the aren't in the playoffs now will be in the playoffs come the end of the season. So Ryan and I thought would be fun is to revisit what we had suggested at the beginning of the season was going to be a playoff teams, who was going to be in and who was going to be out from last season, and see how that sits where it is now, and give us a bogey and see if we can pick those teams that are going to change between now and the end of the season. Does that sound good?
Yep, yep, yep. I
So
love it.
just a reminder then, let's start with the East.
Okay, so we're just to be clear, these are the standings as of
At the end
yesterday,
of
the
yes,
end of
as end of
Thanksgiving weekend.
the end of Thanksgiving weekend, which is Sunday night. So
Okay.
that's where we were sitting. So we had both had said in the East, out from last season, was going to be. Oh, actually, I did. I said Tampa Bay, Washington, and the Islanders. You said Washington and the Islanders.
Yep.
I think we can both agree
The
the
Islanders are not
Islanders
making the
are not going to
playoffs.
make the playoffs, and I don't think they're going to get there between now and then. So they're still out for both of us.
Yep.
So we can both say that. I think the team, easy to say, is the biggest surprise of the season is the Washington Capitals.
Yeah,
From a good
I
story.
still don't understand where this is coming from.
But as we talked about before we got on the podcast, is they're actually leading the league in goals for at 101 goals. The
That's
closest team to them is 94, and that is New Jersey. But they've played three more games. New Jersey's played three more games, so it's
yeah.
not even close. That obviously Ovechkin has had a great start to the season. Unfortunately, he's injured. Hopefully, he gets back pretty soon. But these other changes they made seem to work, and Thompson's playing his lights out.
Thompson's playing his head off somehow. Now
So,
he's only putting assists up on the board. Dubois not really scoring goals. But when did he turn into like a defensive center? Like his plus minus is great. I
yeah,
don't. It's
yeah,
bonkers to me.
right. So I think it's safe to say they're going to make the playoffs
They're going to
between now.
make
I
the
can't see
playoffs.
them falling out. So,
Yep,
um, and then I also said Tampa Bay would be out, and Tampa Bay right now is
they're a
sitting
point out.
a point
They're a
out,
point
but
out.
they're also got two games in hand over the Flyers. So if we were going to say right now, you're going to stick with your original picks, you want to make changes, I'll give you the first go. Are you going to, obviously, we're both saying Washington is going to make the playoffs.
Yes.
So what changes as of Sunday do you think are going to change, of any changes that are going to happen in the East on the inside?
Well, Philly's not making the playoffs.
Agreed. I think we both can safely say that.
Yeah, Philly is not making the playoffs, and you know what? It's possible that Boston doesn't make the playoffs. They are a mediocre team.
You know what? I'm with you on that. I was going to say Boston as well. So I think we can both say, and we're recording this because we're going to come back to this.
We're gonna hold each other to it.
It's
So
so that's
I think Tampa is playing well enough. If they step up their game a little bit,
yeah,
they could be in.
yeah. My only
And
concern for them, they're missing Kucherov right now. He's injured.
Yes.
And it showed on Saturday at the game. That's for sure. He was
Yes, I'm sure.
big miss, not seeing him
Yeah.
out there. But
Um,
hopefully it's
he'll
not
be
long
back.
term. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be
But
back. And you know, I, I'm gonna pick you up, Phil. I think Buffalo might find their way before the end of the year.
I was actually going to say that. I'm still saying Buffalo, but then you have to pick one more team to come out.
Boston.
Boston. Okay. Okay. But you're picking two to go
No, I'm
in.
not. I'm not saying this is going to happen. By the way, I'm
Okay.
just
Okay.
saying if there are going to be two teams that swap places, those are the two that it'll be.
Flyers and Boston, Tampa and Buffalo. You know what? I think we're in complete agreement right now on that. I agree. I think Buffalo has showed some bright lights. They're actually 5-4-1 the last 10. They're playing decently. Again, they're a young team too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what you're hoping Montreal becomes in a few years. Like they're starting to show improvements. Lindy Ruff has done a good job there so far this season.
Yep,
My only question mark is, are they strong enough on the point, as we talked about early in the season, and are they going to continue to get some goaltending? Those are the question marks.
yes,
Again, it's that Tampa Bay yeah, and Flyers just aren't going to make the playoffs. And I agree, Boston, they're mind-boggling right now with minus 16. It's just they're just not playing
that's
well in their own
crazy.
end. It's just crazy.
That's crazy.
So I agree. So I think we're both in agreement that at this point, Flyers drop out, Boston drops out, Buffalo and Tampa goes in.
Yep.
Okay. The
All right.
West.
This is where it gets interesting.
Yes. The
This
West
is
is
where it
real
gets real
tricky.
interesting. The West is very tricky.
Yeah.
So, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and Dallas. First of all, note Winnipeg's recent return to reality. They weren't going
Yes.
to finish the season playing 900 hockey. Minnesota's amazing. Winnipeg is great. Dallas is great. The the Central Division is just powerhouse. It's an absolute powerhouse. And then the Pacific, you've got Vegas, the Kings, and Vancouver. So they're locked in right now. I don't see either of them slowing down. And then you got Edmonton and Calgary. Now,
Yeah.
I think Edmonton's going to catch fire at some
Yeah.
point. I think they're going to acquire a two, maybe a three on the blue line,
I agree.
and they're going to go on. They're going to catch fire, and I think that's definitely going to happen.
They got to get some better goaltending too. I think they've got to be because the goaltender everybody's talking about that could be available, and I can't believe we haven't heard that Edmonton's in play for them, and I don't understand why. Is Gibson out of
Gibson,
Anaheim?
yeah.
He is obviously he's not the last couple of seasons has played good, but he has had a crappy team in front of him. So if
Well, he
he
hasn't played a lot because he's been
right,
hurt, so
right.
nobody really
So
knows what you're getting.
right, but if you bring in someone that's got leadership there, maybe that helps Skinner too. And you bring in a goalie that's been there, played well, made the playoffs. Maybe that gives Skinner a little bit of a push.
Yep, I think that's
Um,
possible
but I'm surprised that you haven't heard um, Edmonton in the conversation that comes to where he's going to land because everybody believes that he's going to be traded before the playoffs.
for
But
sure.
where is he going to go? So, but I'm surprised Edmonton has. But I agree. I think Edmonton McDavid has caught fire, which is great.
Yep.
Draisaitl is just doing what Draisaitl does. So I think Edmonton's going to stay in the playoffs. I'm hedging my bets on Vancouver. I worry Vancouver without getting the goaltending. I think last year was as good as they played last year was a bit of a early push on a young team. I meaning they played a little bit over their heads. And I
Yeah,
think you're seeing a little bit of that shine rub off. Now they're still 6-4 in their last 10. They're playing well. They're in a playoff position. I'm not ready to pull the shoot on them right now. But I agree. I think as good as Calgary started out, I think they're going to be sellers at the trade deadline. I don't believe they think that they said before the season they were going to be a rebuilding year.
yeah.
So they came out of the gates really, really well. They settled down in the last little bit here.
I
So
think Calgary and Colorado flip
yeah, I think Calgary's not going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be selling players come the second half of the season. So,
yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's Calgary and Colorado. I'm going to put a pencil mark in on Vancouver. I'm worried about Vancouver. I think there
So
could
who
be a
fought, so
connection.
who takes their spot? Is it
I,
Utah? Because that was my preseason.
I actually don't. I think it's gonna. If anybody makes it, I'm gonna go back to my pick, and I'm going to say that Montgomery gets something out of
The Blues,
St. Louis, and the Blues make it.
they're
If
terrible.
Vancouver doesn't get in, but I think Montgomery going to turn that team around.
They're terrible.
Yes, they have been playing terrible, which is another question mark. As of today, all four teams of the Four Nations Cup have had to submit their teams. They're going to be
I
announced
know.
on Wednesday. So Ottinger is being bantied as the starting goaltender for Team Canada. Now, he had a shutout on the weekend.
Ottinger, please American.
Oh, sorry, not Ottinger. I'm Binnington. Sorry, Binnington.
Bennington.
My apologies. Was touted as being the starting goaltender for Team Canada. Had a shutout on the weekend, but hasn't had a great season. But again, the team hasn't played well in front of him. So is he
Right.
still Team Canada's leading goaltender? I don't know who else is.
Logan
Um,
Thompson, maybe.
Logan Thompson might be. He's being bandied out there. I still can't believe people are putting Stuart Skinner on this team at the moment. But I don't know. It's got to be
Me,
him. What's going to be surprising is what does Team USA do for their third goaltender? Is it Swayman or not? Because it's Hellebuck and Ottinger.
it's
Who's third?
it's an embarrassment of riches in net for the Americans,
Right.
though.
But who's
They
going
got
to
a
be the third
lot of.
goalie?
Well, it
Do you
won't be
put Swayman on
Demko.
it? No, but is it going to be Swayman? But he's had a
Probably. He's
terrible
been
season.
super hot. He's been super. He's not his save percentage last few games is like over 950. I think
Well, I
he's
guess
been
maybe
really
it is
hot.
him. But
Um, but by the way, speaking of Binnington, maybe Edmonton trades for Binnington if Gibson's asking price is too high.
maybe the other
Um,
place that sorry to go back on the Gibson thing, the other place that people have talking about Gibson, although Colorado is being pig-headed as far as I'm concerned, saying we're sticking with who we got.
yeah,
They need a goaltending change there.
they're getting the
If
worst
Colorado
goaltending.
does not make the playoffs, it's going to be because of what they've gotten in between the pipes.
Yeah,
Because what's his face? Um, that's in the pipes for them right now, and I'm drawing a blank. He is
I
terrible.
yes,
And I don't know why
Georgiev.
Yeah, Gorgiev, yes. I don't know why they believe in him so much because I don't know, but
Yeah.
they can solely blame themselves if they don't make the playoffs if they don't go do something else in net.
Okay, so you think Vancouver is at risk, and you're picking currently a team that's 5 points behind them. Well, so
Yes,
is Utah for that matter.
yes.
Um, you're picking St. Louis as a dark horse to catch them.
I'm gonna say that they're a
Okay.
dark horse. They're gonna be a dark horse. Like, let's also forget we've bypassed this when we talk about the West. What the hell is going on in Nashville?
Well, they're not making the playoffs.
No, they're not making the playoffs. But what the hell?
uh,
Nobody saw this coming with how bad they are. And now they're talking about, again, we talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago, where he was talking about a rebuild or a restart or whatever.
right.
And now he's talking about making big trades. Again, this week Trotz has been
Well,
in the press saying trades are coming, trades are coming. I'm for sale. Like he's got a for sale sign on that team big time.
oh, for sure. I mean, look at it this way: they have given up. Okay, 79 goals. Okay, that's kind of right in the middle of the West,
Yeah.
and they are minus 21.
Yeah.
They have scored 58 goals in the season.
And they added
58
two
goals in
40 goal scorers to this team in the offseason.
yeah, 58 goals in 25 games. That's like a little over 2 goals a game, 2.1, 2.2
Terrible.
goals a game.
Terrible.
You can't win in this league
Yeah.
like that.
Right. Right.
Even Chicago scored more than that.
Yeah.
Even San Jose scored more than
Yeah.
that. San Jose
This
scored 20 more goals.
San Jose's kind of when celebrating's come back, they're playing pretty decent hockey right now in
They're
some places.
entertaining.
They're entertaining, yeah. But whatever. So that's
They're
interesting. So you had a pin on Utah at some point in the season.
mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put a pin in Vancouver slash um St. Louis. I'm not convinced Vancouver is going to make the playoffs, but I could be wrong. Who knows? Demko is going
Okay.
to come back at some point to play better, but we'll see what happens. So that's interesting. We're going to revisit this come uh the playoffs.
You come the playoffs, come
I look
April.
forward to the next quarter of the season. and most looking forward to Wednesday. We're gonna have some fun next week. Is there any surprises that you think are gonna let's because Team Canada is what we know the best.
Yeah.
If you had to say there was going to be a surprise pick on that team come Wednesday, what player are you saying that we don't think of right now will make that team?
Team Canada.
Yeah.
I am going to be the homer and say Nick Suzuki.
Really? Wow. No, look at it. It could be. He's an interesting guy. He could
And
definitely make
he's
the team.
a good two-way center. Like he can play a
Yeah.
shutdown role. He can play a penalty killing role if they need it.
Yeah.
If they tell him, look, we've got three scoring centers on this league. Your job is to keep, you know,
Right.
Jack Eichel and those guys off the scoreboard.
But do you think he's playing on the fourth line, or do you think he's one of the extras?
I think he would go in and out
Right.
depending on how the
No,
fourth
no,
line center is
yeah.
playing.
There's only 3 games in the round robin. They play each
That's
other
true.
twice. So it's a very short. It's only like a round robin, and the top 2 teams play for the championship. Like, there's no
Yeah, it's very, very quick.
very
It's very,
short.
very quick.
Yeah.
But like as a result, third and fourth liners are going to have a very short leash.
Right. No, absolutely. You don't play well in game 1, you ain't making game 2.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and
especially
if
if
you're
you're a
hot,
goalie.
yeah, absolutely. The one that's interesting that a lot of people are talking about is does Bedard make this team as a youngster, putting him on the team to get around this talent and be around big stars and whatnot, so we can get a flavor of it. I think there
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of talk about this happened with years ago in Crosby and years, you talk about years ago, Team Canada, when we used to be the Canada Cup, did this with Lindros, and Lindros played well, and he was a battering ram out there, different style of hockey, but I remember that series, and he just went around running around hitting everybody in that Canada Cup. But do you think Bedard makes the team?
Probably. Does he really deserve to? I mean,
Again, to your point,
he's not having
no.
a spectacular year by any stretch of the imagination.
But to your point, if in a short series when you got 2 or 3 extra guys, you put a young kid on that line because he's going to be in the next iteration of this in a few years' time, he's going to be on this team, right?
Yeah,
He's going to
he'll be the
be
number two center.
right. So do you put him on the team now and give him some of that flavor, give him some
Yeah.
of that experience? And that's the question,
Yep.
do you put him on this team and give him a little bit of experience? So that would be my surprise one because I agree with you. He's not done a lot this year. He's still young. He's only his second year. Probably doesn't deserve from his numbers to be on the team yet. But I can see them putting him on there and saying, "Hey, you're going to be a kid in a couple of years. Come and come and get some experience." So that'd be
Right.
my thing. But
Right.
interesting. So
Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. Wondering if there's anything that you wanted to point out as an interesting oddity for the week. I've got two.
you go then. You go.
Uh,
You got a couple
okay,
of these and see. I'll be interested
okay.
what yours
So the
are.
first, so the first thing, um, the first thing was the own goal. You must have seen the own goal. Was it Charlie Lindgren? I'm embarrassed.
Oh yes, yes, I did see that. That was hilarious.
Was it Charlie
Oh,
Lindgren?
yeah, we can probably find this very quickly. I think you're right. I think it was him. Yes. Um,
Um,
NHL. Here
it
we're
was
stumbling.
Lindgren. It was
Yeah,
Lindgren.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
Lindgren.
It was
How
so
professional
bad.
of me to look it up while I'm on the air.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I got a computer on. I got
you got a
my
computer. You're
cell
ready
phone.
to
I got
go.
my iPad beside me. I'm
I
always
mean,
got this on.
I've seen goalies give up a goal on a whiff. I have never seen a goalie take the puck, swing it around themselves, and fire it dead center into the net.
It was a beautiful goal.
It was a very
He
smooth,
might have beat a goalie if the goalie was in the net.
right?
No, that was
That was
something else.
that was pretty bonkers. The second thing, and I know this is kind of a repeat of a conversation we had earlier this year when we were talking about Cale Makar and his sort of historic scoring pace to start the year and his plus minus as a result that was completely incongruous and not Bobby Orr like. Well, I found another guy like this.
You've been
And
digging. You've been digging for numbers.
I just saw his stats pop up on something and it took me by surprise again. Carter Verhaeghe has 20 points on the season and he's a minus 16. 25 games into the year, he's minus 16, and he's like the third leading scorer on his team. Like that is
Wow.
now the only way that makes sense to me is that all of his points are on the power play because then
Wow.
they don't count to your plus minus.
Wow.
But how is that possible?
That is insane.
That means he's been on the like. Let's just, for the sake of argument, said all of his points were were at even strength. If that were the case, then he would have been on the ice for 36 goals against.
That's crazy. That's
Now
crazy.
that's not the case, but
That
that
is
seems like
that
a
is a huge.
lot.
I'm not sure I could top that oddity because that's a big one. The one I'll point out is, and I think I sent you this post in a text earlier this week, is that the three fewest teams with the team with the fewest third period goals at home this season, the Bruins have one
In the
third
third period.
period goal
That's
at home
crazy. You
this
pointed
season.
that out the other day, and I think they have four now because
Well, this was as of I
they
think
have
this was
two.
like yeah, this was as of
Yeah, they have two because they scored two against Montreal on
yeah,
Sunday
there you go. So this is before the
yesterday.
weekend. I sent this to you, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's crazy. That's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah. So
Um,
the
what a weird,
what a weird week. And look at
yeah.
we're gonna have a
Well, by
fun
the way,
week.
that's a great way to become a mediocre team is to not score goals in the third period.
Yeah. Give up leads and blow it and not be able to put the puck in the net. It's fun.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting this week. This was fun talking about this. We'll see if our prognostications are right at the end of
Yes.
the year. But I am looking forward. I've said it from the beginning. I'm so looking forward to the Four Nations Cup. I'm looking forward to seeing Team Canada so we can poke holes in any of the questions. It's interesting because they have been saying they're building a team. They're not just putting the highest scoring guys on this team. They're building a team because as you point, it's a short series. You got to win right out of the gate, or you're not gonna go
Yep.
anywhere. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they built this team, especially because I think we both agree they're gonna have to protect their own end because our goaltending isn't going to be the strongest as compared to the other nations in this thing.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. So, by the way, um, for those of our listeners, otherwise known as our friends and family, who were wondering why we didn't mention anything about trying to get to the ratings on television so far this season, that is because I lost all my notes with all the statistics and audience figures for television ratings. So I'm going to have to redo all of that hard research that I did.
That's
And
okay.
hopefully next week we will talk about the
Let's make this a
ratings so far.
commitment. We will do this next week because we should talk about we've hit the quarter mark of the season. There is you
Yeah,
did give some good nuggets of what the ratings have been telling you, which is interesting. So we won't give anything away, but you go do your your research. I'll do some of mine and we'll compare notes next week and look forward to chatting
awesome.
and can't wait to see the announcements on Wednesday.
Fantastic. Well, great
Talk to you
talking to
soon.
you, Phil.
You too. You have a
All
great
right.
week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.